In a quiet and peaceful village, surrounded by green fields and tall trees, there lived a young girl named Betty. She was not rich. She did not have new clothes, expensive toys, or anything fancy like the children in the city. But Betty had something far more valuable than money. She had a kind heart. Betty lived with her mother in a small wooden house near the edge of the village. Her father had passed away when she was very young, so her mother worked hard every single day to take care of her. Life was not easy for them. Most mornings, Betty would wake up early, help her mother with small chores, and then walk to school along a dusty road. Her shoes were old and slightly torn. The soles were thin, and sometimes she could feel the rough stones under her feet. But Betty never complained. Her mother often said, "Be grateful for what you have, my child. Many people don't even have this." And Betty always smiled and replied, "I am happy, Mama." Even when her shoes hurt her feet, she kept walking. One cold morning, the sky looked grey and heavy. The wind was stronger than usual, and the trees were shaking gently. Betty wrapped her small scarf around her neck and started walking to school. Halfway along the road, she noticed something unusual. A boy was sitting under a big tree near the roadside. He looked about her age, maybe a little older. His head was down, and his shoulders were shaking slightly. Betty slowed her steps. As she got closer, she noticed his shoes. They were completely broken. One shoe had no sole at all, and the other was tied together with a thin piece of string. His feet looked cold and red. Betty felt something in her heart. She stopped. "Hey," she said gently, "are you okay?" The boy quickly looked up, surprised. I'm fine," he said, trying to smile. But his voice didn't sound fine at all. Betty looked at him carefully. She could see he was embarrassed. He tried to hide his feet under his trousers, but it was clear he was struggling. Betty sat down near him. "It's very cold today," she said softly. The boy nodded, "Yes." Then Betty asked, "Why aren't you in school?" The boy hesitated. He looked down again. "I don't have proper shoes," he finally said. "I feel ashamed to go like this." Betty felt a deep sadness in her chest. She looked at her own feet. Her shoes were worn out too, but still usable. For a moment, she stayed silent. Then she made a decision. Betty slowly took off her shoes. The boy looked shocked. "What are you doing?" he asked quickly. Betty smiled gently. "Here," she said, holding out her shoes. "You can take them." The boy widened his eyes. "No, I can't take your shoes. You need them too." Betty shook her head. "I can walk barefoot." "You look like you are in pain." The boy stood up slightly, panicking. "But it's not right," Betty said softly. "Sometimes kindness is more important than comfort." The wind blew between them. The silence felt heavy. The boy slowly reached for the shoes. "I will return them tomorrow," he said. Betty nodded. "Okay." She stood up barefoot on the cold ground and walked away. The next day, heavy rain fell over the village. Betty still went to school barefoot. Her feet hurt, but she kept going. When she reached school, she saw the boy again. But this time, he was wearing new shoes. Betty stopped in surprise. The boy ran toward her. "Wait," he shouted. "Where did you get those shoes?" Betty asked. The boy smiled. "My father bought them for me, but I told him everything about you." Betty stayed quiet. "He wants to meet you," the boy added. That afternoon, Betty went with him to a small shop. Inside stood his father. "So you are Betty," he said kindly. Betty nodded shyly. "Yes." The man smiled. "My son told me what you did. You gave your shoes without thinking twice." Betty replied softly, "He needed them more than I did." The man shook his head. "That kind of heart is rare." He then handed her a paper, a scholarship opportunity to study and work in the city. Betty was shocked. "I don't deserve this." The man smiled. "Kindness deserves to grow." Betty sat with her mother. She told her everything. Her mother smiled with tears in her eyes. "I told you kindness always returns," she said. Betty whispered, "I just gave my shoes." Her mother replied, "No, you gave hope." Years later, Betty grew up, studied hard, and succeeded. She returned to her village and built a center for poor children, giving shoes, education, and support. On the wall, she wrote, "Kindness always finds its way back." Moral: kindness is never wasted. Even the smallest act can change a life forever.